The call from the caterer lasted 4 minutes. I know because I checked my phone when I stepped back through the rooftop door. 4 minutes. That's all it took for everything to shift into something I couldn't quite name yet, something that sat in my chest like a stone swallowed wrong. The laughter hit me first. Loud, careless, the kind that fills a room and spills over the edges. 40 people, family and friends we'd spent 3 months inviting, all turned toward the center of the rooftop terrace like flowers facing light. I followed their eyes. Dylan Archer was on one knee. He was holding Meredith's hand, my fiancée's hand, and grinning up at her with that expression he always wore, the one that said I'm charming and I know it and so does everyone in this room. The crowd was eating it up. Someone's aunt was covering her mouth. Someone else was clapping. And on Dylan's finger, his left hand raised slightly for effect, was my father's wedding ring. I stopped walking. The ring was gold, plain, scratched along one side from 32 years of wear. My mother had pressed it into my palm the morning of Dad's funeral and said, "He'd want you to have this." I'd carried it for 6 years. I'd planned to wear it at my own wedding, 3 weeks from now, stacked beside whatever band Meredith and I chose together. I'd left it in my jacket pocket. The jacket I'd draped over the back of my chair when I stepped away to take that call. "Dylan." My voice came out quieter than I intended. The laughter softened. A few heads turned. "Can I have that back?" Dylan looked up at me. That grin didn't move. "Relax, man. We're celebrating." He stood slowly like he had all the time in the world. Like I'd interrupted something rather than walked back into my own engagement party. "The ring?" I said. "Please." He slid it off his finger and set it on the table between us. Not placed, slid. Like it was a poker chip. Like it was nothing. I picked it up. It was warm from his skin. That bothered me more than I expected. "Nathan." Meredith's voice. I turned to her. She was still smiling, but the smile had changed shape, smaller now, sharper at the edges. "It was a joke." "I know." "Then why do you look like that?" "Like what?" "Like someone just—" She stopped, glanced at Dylan, then back at me. "Like someone died." The word landed. I don't think she realized which word she'd chosen. Or maybe she did. With Meredith, I was never entirely sure where the line between careless and calculated sat. "That was my father's ring," I said. "I know what it is." "Then you understand why I'm asking for a little?" "Oh my God." She exhaled through her nose, that specific exhale I'd learned over 2 years meant "You're embarrassing me." "Are you seriously jealous right now?" It was a joke, Nathan. Dylan was being funny. Everyone was laughing. I wasn't. Clearly. She reached for her champagne glass. "You know what, you need to relax. This is supposed to be a happy night." I looked at Dylan. He had stepped back slightly, hands in his pockets, watching us with an expression that wasn't quite guilt and wasn't quite satisfaction. Something between the two. Something comfortable. "I'm not jealous," I said to Meredith. "I just—" "Then stop acting like it." Her voice dropped, but not enough. The closest table could still hear. I could feel it. Dylan was just playing around. "If you have a problem with my friends—" "I've never had a problem with your friends." "You always have a problem with Dylan." "That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about, Nathan?" She set her glass down. Her eyes had gone flat, the way they did when a conversation had already been decided in her head before it finished out loud. "Because from where I'm standing you walked back in here, made a scene over a ring, and now you're ruining the mood for everyone." I looked around the room. Everyone was watching. Some pretended not to. "I didn't make a scene," I said quietly. "You're making one right now." "Meredith." "If you don't like it," she said, "cancel the wedding." The silence that followed lasted maybe 2 seconds. But it was the kind of silence that stretches, that bends time slightly, that makes 2 seconds feel like something you'll remember for years. She didn't take it back. She picked up her champagne glass, turned slightly toward the group, and said something to Dylan's girlfriend about the view from the terrace. Just like that. The conversation ended on her terms, the way most of our conversations ended, and the laughter slowly rebuilt itself around her like a wave returning to shore. I stood there holding my father's ring. I turned it over once in my palm. Twice. The scratch on the side. The slight weight of it. I remembered being 12 years old, watching my father's hands while he drove, the ring catching light from the window, and thinking that it looked permanent. That some things just stayed. I closed my fingers around it. "If you don't like it, cancel the wedding." She'd said it the way people say things they don't believe will be taken seriously. The way you dare someone when you're certain they won't move. When you've calculated the distance between what you're offering and what they're willing to do, and found yourself safely on the other side of it. I walked to the bar. Ordered water. Stood with my back to the party for a moment and breathed. Something had cracked. Not broken, not yet. Cracked the way old wood sounds before it gives. The way ice sounds before you fall through. A warning inside a sound if you're paying attention. I'd spent 2 years learning not to pay attention. I unfolded my hand and looked at the ring again. Wiped it clean against my shirt, slowly, carefully, and slid it into my pocket. Deep this time. Buttoned the pocket closed. She dared me. I turned back toward the party. Found Meredith across the rooftop, laughing again, her head tilted toward Dylan's shoulder at an angle I recognized. I smiled when someone approached me. I said the right things for the rest of the night. But the crack was still there. And for the first time in 2 years I didn't try to ignore it. She shouldn't have dared me that I drove home alone. Meredith had waved me off outside the restaurant, laughing at something Dylan said, her hand briefly touching my arm the way you touch a door frame when you pass through, out of habit, not intention. "I'll be home soon," she'd said. She didn't look at me when she said it. That was 10:47 p.m. I sat in our apartment with the lights off until past midnight. Not dramatically, I wasn't performing grief for an empty room. I just couldn't find a reason to turn them on. The ring was on the kitchen table in front of me. I hadn't put it back in its box. I kept looking at it the way you look at something that used to make sense. At 2:13 a.m. I heard her key in the lock. She didn't seem surprised to find me sitting in the dark. That bothered me too. She dropped her bag on the counter, stepped out of her heels and said, "You left early." "I left at 11:30, I said. "That's not early. That's our engagement party ending. Some of us stayed to actually enjoy it." I didn't answer that. She moved to the refrigerator, opened it, stared into it for a moment, then closed it. When she turned around, her expression had already settled into the shape of an argument she'd been preparing in the car. "You embarrassed me tonight," she said. "I asked for my father's ring back. You made a scene. Meredith. You stood there with that face you do, that martyred face. And you sucked all the air out of the room. People noticed. My mother noticed. She texted me on the way home." "What did she say?" "That Nathan seemed tense." She crossed her arms. "Which is a kind way of saying you were acting like a child." Something shifted in me then. Not anger exactly. Clarity. The kind that's almost worse. "Do you love Dylan?" I asked. The room went very still. She stared at me. "What did you just say?" "It's a direct question. It's an insane question." "Then answer it." "I'm not going to dignify." She stopped, pressed her fingers to her forehead. "Nathan. He's my friend. He's been my friend since college. The fact that you're asking me this right now tells me everything about why tonight went the way it did. That's not an answer." "Of course I don't love Dylan," she said. "It the way people say of course. The sky is blue," quickly, impatiently, irritated to be asked something so obvious. But her eyes didn't match it. Her eyes went somewhere else for just a fraction of a second. I'd learned to notice fractions. "Every time I bring up Dylan," I said, "you tell me I'm jealous. Every time I set a boundary, you call it control. And I've been sitting here for 3 hours trying to figure out when I agreed to those being my only 2 options. Here we go. I'm not fighting with you. I'm talking to you. You're attacking me. I'm asking questions. You're doing that thing where you stay completely calm so I look like the crazy one." Her voice cracked slightly. "I hate when you do that. I'm calm because I'm tired, Meredith. Tired of having the same argument where I end up apologizing for noticing things." She laughed, short, sharp. "Noticing things. That's what you call it." I thought about last March. Our anniversary. She'd made a reservation at a place downtown, the kind with cloth napkins and low lighting, and I'd taken half a day off work. By 6 p.m. she texted, "Running late, Dylan's dealing with something, I can't just leave him." I'd eaten at the bar alone. When she got home at 9, she brought me a dessert box from somewhere and said, "Don't make it weird." I didn't make it weird. I thought about the texts I'd seen, not snooping. She'd left her phone face up on the couch and the preview had just been there. "Dylan, 12:04 a.m., you deserve so much better." When I asked about it the next morning, she said it was about her job. That he was being supportive. "Carter told me to be cool." "That's just how she and Dylan are," he'd said. "You're reading into it." I was always reading into it. Funny how gaslighting works. It doesn't arrive in one dramatic moment. It accumulates quietly like water damage, and by the time you see the structural problem, the walls have already been soft for years. I've been the problem in this relationship. Since month 4, I said. That's what it feels like. Like somewhere. Around month 4 the story became, Nathan is difficult, Nathan is jealous. Nathan doesn't trust me, Nathan needs to relax. And I believed it. I believed it for almost 3 years. Because it was true. Maybe some of it was. I looked at her. But not all of it. And you know that. She looked away. The silence stretched long enough that I heard the refrigerator hum. A cab passed on the street below. Someone laughed 2 floors. I love you, she said finally. Quietly. Like a reflex. I know, I said. And I did, I think, in whatever shape she was capable of it. But love shaped like that, conditional, convenient, only offered after damage, wasn't what I'd agreed to. She went to bed without another word. The bedroom door didn't slam dramatically. It closed firmly, definitively, the way someone ends a chapter they're tired of. I sat at the kitchen table for another hour. I kept thinking about what she'd said at the party. Cancel the wedding. She'd meant it as punctuation, not a suggestion. A way to shut the conversation down. She'd been certain I wouldn't touch it. I thought about Carter. I call him tomorrow, I decided. Carter, who'd been telling me to be cool for 3 years. Carter, who I suddenly realized had always taken her side and called it friendship. I opened my laptop. I don't know exactly what I was looking for at first, but my fingers typed without much direction, and within 10 minutes I had a name I hadn't thought about in 2 years, Sophie Lynn, the journalist from the Herald. We'd worked together briefly 2 years back on a building permit story for the paper. She'd been sharp, honest, the kind of person who asked follow-up questions. More importantly, she'd once told me something I'd filed away and never used. If you ever need someone to help expose something real, call me. Her email address was on the paper's staff page. I opened a new message. I stared at the blank subject line for a long moment. Then I started typing. I didn't call ahead. I just drove. It was early enough that the streets were mostly empty, that particular Sunday morning quiet that makes a city feel borrowed. I had the ring in my jacket pocket again. I kept touching it at red lights, just pressing my thumb against it through the fabric, making sure it was still there. My mother's house is 40 minutes north. A small colonial with blue shutters that have needed repainting for 3 years. And a front garden she tends with the kind of patience I've never managed to inherit. When I pulled into the driveway at 8:20 a.m., she was already on the porch with her coffee. She looked at my face. She set her coffee down. Come inside, she said. Diane Mercer has never been a woman who rushes comfort. She doesn't reach for you immediately or fill the silence with noise. She put the kettle on first, set 2 mugs on the kitchen table, sat down across from me and folded her hands and waited. I told her everything. The ring on Dylan's finger. The laughter. It was just a joke. Are you seriously jealous? Right now? The drive home. The dark apartment. Meredith coming through the door at 2 a.m. already armed. The question I asked. The fraction of a second in Meredith's eyes that answered it. Before her mouth could contradict it. Mom listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. She turned her mug slowly in her hands, a habit I'd watched my whole life, something she did when she was choosing words carefully. Your father's ring, she said. Finally. Yeah. He wore it every day for 32 years. She looked up at me. Did I ever tell you about the Kowalski situation? No. 1987. Your father was working for the city planning office. There was a man, Kowalski, his supervisor, who had been taking credit for your father's work for almost 2 years. Everyone knew. Nobody said anything. She paused. At a company dinner, Kowalski made a joke at your father's expense in front of 30 people. A real joke. The kind with teeth. Everyone laughed. I waited. Your father stood up, she said. He didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He said very quietly, that's the last time. And he sat back down. 2 weeks later he had a new job. Within a year, Kowalski's department had collapsed under an audit. Your father quietly helped initiate. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. He never talked about it. That wasn't the point. The point was that he'd made a decision in that room and he kept it. He left, I said. He chose dignity. She reached across the table and touched my hand once, briefly. That ring isn't just Metal, Nathan. Your father made a promise with it. And last night someone put it on like a costume. The kettle whistled. She got up to pour. I stared at the table. Meredith said to cancel the wedding, I said. I heard you the first time. She set my mug in front of me. She said it like she didn't believe you. Would. She doesn't. Does she know you well enough to be right? I wrapped both hands around the mug. The warmth moved through my palms slowly. She used to, I said. Mom sat back down. The question isn't what Meredith knows. The question is what you know. She looked at me steadily. And I think you've known something for a long time that you've been very patient about ignoring. I didn't answer her. She didn't push. That was always the difference between my mother and everyone else in my life. She'd tell you the true thing once and then let you carry it yourself. She trusted that you were capable of the weight. I was sitting in my car in her driveway when Joel called. Or I called Joel. I sat there for 5 minutes telling myself I wasn't going to, and then I called him. Joel Park has been my closest friend since we were 19 and sharing a dorm room the size of a generous closet. He is also, I'd realized recently, the only person in my life who had never told me to be cool about anything. He picked up on the second ring. I was waiting for this call. He said, How long have you been waiting? Honestly? About 14 months. He exhaled. How bad was last night for you? On a scale of 1 to 10. Yeah. 11, I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I need to tell you something. And I need you to know that I've been trying to figure out for a long time how to say it without it sounding like I was going behind your back. Because I wasn't. I just didn't know what it meant yet. Something tightened in my chest. Tell me. At the party. When you stepped away. To take that call. He stopped. Started again. I was near the bar. Carter and Dylan were a few feet from me. I don't think they knew I could hear. Joel. Carter said, She's not going to leave him before the wedding. It's too complicated. Just wait. Pause. Dylan said, I know. I know. The street outside the car window was perfectly still. A bird landed on my mother's garden fence and left. Carter said that, I repeated, word for word. I've been sitting on it because I kept telling myself it could mean something else. That maybe it was about something different. But after last night, he stopped. It's not about something different, Nathan. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. You're telling me now. I should have told you months ago. Yeah. I pressed my thumb against the ring through my jacket. You should have. Neither of us spoke for a moment. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. That was mostly true. I'll talk to you soon. I sat in the car for another few minutes. After we hung up, my mother's blue shutters needed painting. The garden was neat and attended to and alive. She kept it that way alone for 6 years. Some people know how to protect the things that matter. I drove back toward the city. The apartment was quiet when I got back. Meredith's car was gone. Sunday yoga, probably, or brunch with people I'd stopped being invited to gradually enough that I hadn't noticed the pattern until it was complete. I sat at the kitchen table. I opened my laptop. The email draft was where I'd left it. Sophie Lynn's address in the recipient field. The subject line I'd typed at 2 a.m. Something real. Are you still interested? I read it once. I hit send. Sophie Lynn responded in 40 minutes. Her reply was 3 sentences. I remember you. I remember what I said. Tell me everything. So I did. Not all at once. We exchanged emails through Sunday afternoon, carefully, the way you handle something that could break if moved too quickly. I told her about the ring. About the pattern. About Carter and Dylan and a relationship that had been slowly, quietly restructured around my willingness to absorb things I should have named. She asked the right questions. That was the thing about Sophie. She always asked the right questions. By Sunday evening we had the shape of something. By Monday morning I was at my desk at work when my phone started ringing. I looked at the screen. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. You canceled the wedding. Meredith's voice was unlike anything I'd heard from her before. Stripped of its usual architecture, the cool edges, the practiced exasperation. Raw underneath. You actually canceled the wedding. Yes, I said. Without talking to me. You told me to. That's not, she stopped. I heard her breathing. Nathan. That's not what that was. I know what it was, I said. It was a dare. You were certain I wouldn't move. I moved. You called a journalist. Sophie's writing a piece on social performance and public announcements. The engagement announcement is part of it. I gave her permission to include it. You're trying to humiliate me. No. I kept my voice level. Not cold, level. There's a difference and I needed her to feel it. I'm trying to be honest about what happened. You should try it. How dare. Meredith. I said her name once, quietly, and something about the way I said it made her stop. Dylan wore my father's ring at our engagement party. You defended him. You told me to cancel the wedding. Carter told Dylan to just wait, that you wouldn't leave me before the wedding because it was too complicated. I paused. Too complicated. That's what I was. A complication. Silence. Who told you that? Her voice had changed. It doesn't matter. It was Joel. Of course it was Joel, he never. It doesn't matter, I said again. Because the point isn't who said it. The point is that it was said. And that somewhere in the last 3 years, our relationship became a waiting room for something else, and you let me furnish it and sit in it and call it a life. I heard her crying then. Real crying, not performance. I'd been with her long enough to know the difference. And it still mattered to me. That was the worst part. It still landed somewhere soft. I do love you, she said. I believe you, I said. But I don't think that's enough anymore. I don't think it's been enough for a long time, and I think part of you knows that. She didn't answer. I'll be at the apartment tonight to start getting my things. I'd prefer if you weren't there. If you want to talk after everything's separated, I'm willing. But I'm done being the problem, Meredith. I was never the problem. I ended the call. I sat at my desk for a full minute without moving. Then I went back to work. The practical dismantling of a shared life is surprisingly clinical when you've already done the emotional work in advance. I called the venue. I called the florist. I contacted the joint account holder at our bank and initiated separation. Each conversation took less time than I expected. People were professional. Sympathetic occasionally. One woman at the catering company said, "You're not the first this week, honestly," which almost made me laugh. Almost. The call from Linda Voss came at 2 p.m. Linda was Meredith's mother's closest friend. She'd been at the party. She'd been one of the 40 people watching when Dylan slid the ring across the table. "Nathan," she said. Her voice was careful, considered. "I owe you an apology." "You don't have to." "I do." She stopped me firmly. "I saw what happened that night and I laughed along with everyone else because I didn't want to be the one to disrupt the room. And I've been ashamed of it since." Pause. That ring. I knew what it was. I knew whose it was. And it wasn't funny. It was never funny. I closed my eyes briefly. "Thank you, Linda. Are you all right?" "I'm getting there." "Good," she said. "You deserve to get there." Evan Marsh texted at 3:30. Evan was the photographer we'd hired for the engagement shoot 6 weeks ago. Professional, thorough, the kind who delivered 3 times more photos than you expected. His text was brief. "Full gallery just sent to both your emails. Let me know if you need anything adjusted." I opened the gallery. There were 340 photos. I scrolled slowly. In photo 187, taken candid during the party, Dylan was mid-laugh with his left hand raised slightly, making some kind of gesture, talking to someone across the table. The ring was on his finger. Clearly. Unmistakably. I forwarded it to Sophie without a message. She replied in 6 minutes. "This is the one." Carter called at 4:15. I answered because I wanted to. "Hey man," he said. The lightness in his voice was practiced. I recognized it now, that particular tone he used when he was hoping an uncomfortable thing might pass if he just didn't acknowledge it directly. "Heard things got a little heavy. Just wanted to check in. Joel told me what you said to Dylan at the party." A beat. "I don't know what you think you heard, but..." "Carter." I cut him off cleanly. "Don't. I've known you for 8 years. I'd like to stay civil. But I need you to know that I know. And that just wait is not something a friend says." Silence. "I'm going to hang up now," I said. "Take care of yourself." I ended the call. 4 sentences. Some things don't deserve more than 4 sentences. Joel helped me carry boxes. He didn't say much, which was exactly right. He carried the heavy ones without being asked. He wrapped my father's ring box in a dish towel before placing it in the last bag, carefully, like it was something sacred. Because it was. We loaded everything into my car in 2 hours. I stood in the empty corner of the apartment that had been mine, the desk, the lamp, the small shelf of books, and looked at the clean wall where those things had been. Walls forget you faster than people do. We drove to Joel's place where I'd be staying until I found somewhere. He unlocked the door, flipped the light on, and set the boxes down without ceremony. "You want food?" he asked. "Maybe later." He nodded. Gave me space. I sat on his couch and looked at my hands for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called him, even though he was 12 feet away in the kitchen. He answered immediately. "Yeah. I'm okay," I said. Pause. Then, "I know. I just needed to say it out loud." "I know that too," he said. "Pasta in 20 minutes. I set the phone down. I was okay. For the first time in 3 years I actually was. 6 months is enough time. Not to forget. I don't think forgetting is the point. But enough time to recognize yourself again in the mirror. Enough time to stop reaching for your phone at 2 a.m. to check if someone came home. Enough time to realize that the absence of anxiety isn't emptiness. It's just peace, and you'd forgotten what it felt like. My new apartment is on the 4th floor of a building with large east-facing windows. I wake up with sunlight instead of silence. It's a small thing. Changed everything. The promotion had been sitting on the table at work for 8 months before I finally took it.